something on my mind. I bet you know what I'm thinking about. You know I can't stop loving you. Every time when you're looking at me, it feels like my heart is skipping a beat, yeah. You know I can't live without you. You make me crazy in a good way. So come on, baby, let's talk. Let's talk about love, like you and me all night. And let's talk about love and feeling alright. And let's talk about love. Yeah, baby, come and dance with me. You're everything I'll ever need. So let's talk about love. Can I take you out tonight? Kiss you in the moonlight. There is no place I'd rather be. Come on, girl, we can take my car, drinking some beers in your favorite bar, yeah. You know I can't live without you. You make me crazy in that good way. So come on, baby, let's talk. Let's talk about love, like you and me all night. And let's talk about love and feeling alright. And let's talk about love. Yeah, baby, come and dance with me. Everything you'll ever need. So let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love. Let's talk about love.
Hello, everyone, and we are back, and it's episode number 11. It's hard to believe that I've been coming on here for 11 episodes already. Just wanted to say thank you to all of you who tune in, and even if you tune in later on, thank you for tuning in at all. And when you do tune in, please remember to subscribe, like, and share so that others can benefit from this broadcast. It's very near and dear to my heart because marriage is a great institution, regardless of what we have done with it in society. It still remains great in the sight of God. Tonight, I'm flying solo with my topic. I just could not get anyone brave enough to come on and talk about this topic. And the topic is sleeping with a stranger. Sleeping with a stranger. And I guess it sounds, somebody asked me, why are you talking about that topic? Why not something else? Because it's happening. It's happening, and it's not just happening worldwide, it's happening church-wide. And so we just want to delve into it a little bit. I can't go as deep as I would like. I would love to just do a whole entire teaching on this, but tonight I'm just going to hit some of the points that I think are major to couples who are married becoming strangers. And so where am I going tonight? Where am I going? Well, feeling estranged in marriage can be very challenging. It's a challenging experience, but it is more common than we think. A lot of people don't talk about it because they feel like it's only happening to them. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight that you're not alone. You're not alone. And so there's no need to feel alone. So tonight, the topic is for anybody who has been feeling estranged. How do I know this is happening? Well, it's happened to me before years ago. Just you marry someone and you expect to go your entire life, married to that someone, but then they take a detour or whatever, and it seems like you have no idea who this person is that you actually said I do to on the day that you got married. So the causes, well, goals change, and then they're no longer defined. Nobody's defining the goals for the marriage anymore. People are getting bored with each other. A sermon was preached at our church, All Nations, on Sunday, and it was geared towards men because we're celebrating men this month. And the bishop was talking about men being kings in their homes, but you can't be a king if you don't want to be a king. And then there are the queens pushing their men to be kings who don't want to actually take on that role. You get married, it's great, it lasts a good while, and it's still a little great, and then it lasts a little longer. Not so great. And you keep going and going and going until you find out and you find yourself married to a stranger. The goals change. Over time, people change. And it doesn't matter how long or how short you've been married, it happens anyway. Personal goals change, interests change, values change. And if they're not addressed, there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect. And then the second thing is the neglect of the marriage. The marriage is neglected. There's a communication breakdown. Nobody's talking to each other anymore. And when you do speak to each other, it feels like it's very difficult. The conversation is hard. The conversation is difficult. You're not talking with each other, you're talking at each other. And then there are those personal issues that creep in unaware. It creeps in unaware, like unresolved conflict that you just kept shoving under the carpet. Oh, we'll talk about it another time. Oh, we'll talk about it another time. And you never get to it. So it becomes a personal issue and an unresolved conflict. Emotional distancing. And on my first show, episode number 1, we talked about emotional intimacy. So here, there's no more intimacy, no more emotional intimacy. Nobody's even talking about emotions anymore. It's as if they're non-existent. And all of this impacts a marriage, and you find yourself sleeping in the same bed every night, but with a stranger, with a stranger. And from a biblical perspective, the Bible doesn't explicitly speak about this, but it does talk about becoming one flesh. Genesis 2:24 says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. There's a leaving and a cleaving that is supposed to happen. And when it doesn't, other people get involved in the whole situation. And then in Ephesians 5:31, it still quotes Genesis 2:24, emphasizing this one flesh. And it talks about it being between God and the church, and then between a husband and a wife. And so it gets to Matthew 19:6, and it says, so they are no longer two, but they are one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one tear apart. There's a permanent and inseparable situation that is supposed to be going on here, but it takes work. It takes work, and a lot of people do not want to put the work in. Picture that wedding day. Even prior to that, picture, and I go on social media, and sometimes you see somebody proposing to another person, and it's so amazing, and there's tears and all the things, and they break out the beautiful ring, and it's beautiful, and it's lovely, and it's wonderful. And sometimes that begins to change almost immediately. And so you turn in bed and you look at your sleeping spouse and wonder, when did we become strangers? Dreams of that good marriage no longer exists. Loving and supporting each other seems like a lifetime ago. Trying to communicate, but every interaction turns into an argument. It seems like a lifetime ago. How do I know about all of this? How do I know about all of this? Well, because I experienced it firsthand myself, and also because it's my profession. I am a Christian marriage and family therapist, and it allows me to see this all too often, which is why I'm talking about it tonight, because I get to see it all too often. However, tonight, I beckon you not to throw in the towel. Do not throw in the towel. I wrote a book years ago called Christian Divorce Wars. And whenever people see the cover and they hear the word divorce, they think it's about divorce. It's actually about the foundation of marriage. Because I could literally hear the gavel being pressed down to the table. God is the judge, and he's saying, no, do not let it go. Do not let it go. There are some instances when you do have to let it go. I am a movie buff, right? And there are two particular movies that come to mind. One is Enough with J-Lo, and the other one is called Sleeping with the Enemy. And in both of those instances, those women were being beaten to the pulp. And if you're in my space tonight, that is a whole other story. That is a whole other story, because you're definitely sleeping with a stranger. And sometimes you keep sleeping with that stranger, thinking it's going to go away, or thinking sometimes people literally get to the point where they think that whole bashing is a part of the love story. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, do not let anyone beat on you, because that is not what marriage is about. So if that is you, I'm hoping that after this conversation, you get the help that you need to get out of that situation. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I know this is live, and you may not be watching it when it's live, but whenever you're watching it, my hope is that you will remind yourself who you are and why you are and how you are. And there are some steps to take, I'm not talking about the beating situation. I'm just talking about being estranged. There are steps you can take, and I do it all the time with my couples that I work with. Marriage takes work. So you have to make an effort. You make an effort to get up every morning and go to work, because if you don't get to work, you don't get paid. Well, marriage takes work. So you have to keep reminding yourself, why? Why did I get married to her? Why did I say yes to him? You have to remember what I call in my sessions, remember your why. Remember your why, because that why is what will make it a little bit easier to stay in the game. Remembering why did I get married? Tyler Perry made 2 movies about that. And we saw all kinds of foolishness going on in those movies. Why? And the question continued to remain, why did I get married? So you have to remind yourself of your why. Find similar activities that you currently enjoy and start making time to do them. It sounds so easy coming out of my mouth. It's just flipping out of my mouth because I do it on a continuous basis with couple after couple after couple. So it comes out of my mouth like that. But I recognize when I sit before somebody that it's not going to come out as easily as it's coming out of my mouth, because it requires work. So you have to find similar activities. And what about God? If I'm going to be talking to Christian couples, which is mostly who I talk to, I always ask, well, where does God fit? Where does he fit? And to be honest, most of the time I hear he's not fitting right now, Dr. Sharon. He doesn't fit. Um, when do you guys pray together? Oh, I can't remember the last time we did that. And so he has to be intentionally put first, right? Put first. I automatically go to a triangle. I didn't even know this existed, but I started doing this years ago, talking about this triangle with God at the top and that couple at the bottom. And as they're moving towards God, something is happening. They're moving closer to him, but they're also moving closer to each other. And that is the idea of this whole thing. That's the idea of this whole thing, especially in a Christian marriage. If God is not first, then it's going to get a little sticky, because you're looking to the other person. You're looking to the other person to decide who you are, when you need to be looking to God to decide who you are individually and collectively as a couple. And so I talk about this as the 4 C's, and that first C would be Christ, and the second C would be communication. There has to be communication, and communication doesn't mean you're talking all the time. You're not talking all the time. Most of communication happens when you're listening. Listening. Active listening is what we call it. People talk about active listening. Well, what is that? What is active listening? It means you're not just listening with your ears. A lot of your other parts are involved in this listening. Your posture, everything, looking and understanding the other person's posture. That's all communication. When the person is telling you how they feel, what they like or dislike, what they desire, you need to listen intently, not just with your ears, because you have to know what this person is all about. And it happens when you actively listen to them. And then there's grace and forgiveness, right? Grace and forgiveness, well, that happens when we start collaborating. That's my third C. Collaboration brings grace and forgiveness. Forgive yourself. There are some things that sometimes we walk into marriage and we walk in with some things of our own. We call it baggage. We bring baggage from other relationships, or just baggage from childhood or wherever we're bringing it from, and we bring it and we plant it right in front of our spouse. And they get to either catch it or leave it, right? So we're bringing these things, but there's such a thing as grace and forgiveness. Forgive yourself, forgive your spouse, and exercise grace. Grace is just favor and kindness. Grace is just favor and kindness. Oh my, look at all the grace that God has bestowed on you personally. When you just look at all the things you've been forgiven for, it should be really easy to forgive the other person, but it isn't, because we're thinking only about ourselves. We become selfish in the game. We become selfish in the game, and we just lose sight of why we got married. We lose sight of everything, and a lot of things happen to create all of this. The number one thing that people show up to me about is infidelity. And then the next thing is communication. And then the list just starts getting bigger and bigger. Infidelity is, people use it as a gateway to get out of marriage. He screwed up, she screwed up, I'm out. But I don't think that's the intention that God has for marriage, right? There is room for forgiveness. There's always room for forgiveness. I recall having to forgive over and over. And I'm sure the other person had to forgive me as well. But there's something that forgiveness does. It sets you free. It sets you free. How do I know? Because I'm free, right? It sets you free to be who you are. It sets you free to be where you need to go. It just sets you free. Even when the marriage ends up in divorce, I do not condone that, even though it's happened to me. I do not condone that. I believe in the institution of marriage. But when divorce happens, something happens. I remember, as if it was yesterday, not being that forgiving person. Today, people think and talk about me as being nice and all of those things. Well, if you saw me back then, it wasn't really nice. And I'm just going to give a very short testimonial, right? You're married, the person says, I no longer want to be here. I'm done. In my case, the person said, I'm done with God. And immediately I said, whoo, that means they're done with me. And so I was right. I was right. And you try desperately to hold on with everything you got, but it doesn't work out. And then the marriage ends. And something happens to your mind. I'm just talking about me. You all are perfect. So I get to talk about me. Something happens and you feel like you could actually hate someone. That was my first experience of feeling like I could actually hate someone. I don't remember really feeling that way before. And I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with that. I just would lay there. Just the anger that's boiling up inside of you because of unforgiveness. But I do remember reading a scripture, and I was actually reading it to my young children at the time. And it said, love holds no record of wrong. And even though I had read that many, 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 many times before, on that particular night, it clicked in my mind because my children were fast asleep. So I was reading it to myself. And I promised myself that I would forgive. I didn't know how that was going to happen, how it was going to play out, but every single day I would pray that prayer, Lord, help me to forgive. Lord, it became like a routine. It became like something, music playing over and over in my headspace. Lord, help me to forgive. Lord, help me to forgive. And the thing is, you don't even realize God is answering your prayers until you bump into the person and you say, somebody was next to me when I bumped in, and I said, I started jumping up and down. I didn't know what to do with myself. And she said, why are you jumping up and down? I said, because I forgive. And she said, forgive who? And I said, forgive him, because he was coming towards us. And she said, how do you know? I said, because I feel like I've been set free. And if you're on here tonight and you need to forgive, I promise you, it sets you free and it sets the other person free to actually start becoming friendly again. It's not in a marriage, but it's a friendship. And because it only happens because you made the decision. All of this is decision making. The decision making. I could sit on this show all night tonight and talk about this and get off. And if you didn't make the decision, you would still be in a funk because you have to decide. You have to decide. And initially, you choose, you get to intentionally choose to love your spouse. You choose to love. You choose to love. All of this is a choice. Everything I've talked about up to this point is a choice. You get to choose. You get to embrace your spouse as a good gift from God. a good gift. I recently talked about unwrapping the gifts of setbacks. And sometimes you have setbacks in your marriage. Unwrap. I dare you, I challenge you tonight to unwrap that setback gift and turn it into a good gift and watch what happens in your marriage. It will change the future of your marriage. I promise. It will change the future. But all this requires work. It requires work. It requires a lot of work. And you might not be able to do it on your own. You might not. My services, so many there. I go on social media and we're everywhere. We're everywhere. Therapists are everywhere that I go now. Back in the day when I became a therapist, nobody really wanted to do this work. But now, everywhere. I teach in a college, 2 of them. Last semester, I had close to 90 students wanting to do this work in the future. So you have no excuse. You can't say, well, Dr. Sharon, I can't do it by myself. Well, find somebody to help you do this. But the decision has to be wanting your marriage, desiring your marriage, desiring not to sleep with a stranger anymore. If you need help, get help. Get help. Get help. I'm a Christian marriage and family therapist. Mostly it's marriage because I rarely ever see families. And so get help. I offer complimentary services. I don't call them free because nothing is free. They're complimentary because I choose to do that. I don't know if everybody chooses to do that, but I choose to do one time with me for free, right? And you get to do that at inspiredwholenesscounseling.com/services. You get to do it, but you are the one that has to choose. I can't choose for you. I know this is not the frilly kind of topic that everybody wants to talk about, but we need to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. It's all a part of the marriage. It's all a part of love. I'm talking, if I could reach out to some single people out there just beckoning and wanting to be married, my question would be, why? And that's the question you have to ask yourself before you jump into this institution. And I think a lot of times we get to that place of being estranged because we never asked ourselves why. Why? Why do I want to get married? Do I just want to get married because everybody else is getting married? Do I want to get married just because it looks cute? Do I want to get married just because I want to wear a white dress down the aisle? Do I want to get married? Do I want to get married? Well, I got married to somebody, I call him my dream husband. A lot of people want to know why I do that, because it is, that's the reality of it. Is it because we have a perfect marriage? Absolutely not. It's because we look through the imperfections and find perfection in God. That's it. End of story, right? And so we got married 5 years ago during COVID season, and all hell was breaking loose all around us, but we got married. I think our children thought we were crazy. What's wrong with our parents? What's wrong with these people? Why can't they just be friends? I think because we realized there was a why to this. There was a why to this. And as we got into the marriage and all the setbacks started happening, we realized we needed the other person to help us. We needed the other person. We needed each other. And so we understand now, more than 5 years ago, why. So ask yourself, why? And at the tender age that we got married, it was, anything could have happened. because we knew who we were. We had already done some things. Life had already happened, but there's hope for new life. There's hope for new life, you know. But if you're single, how about enjoying that? Enjoying that, right? Enjoy being single. What would that look like? What would the waiting look like if you were enjoying the waiting? You wouldn't be so miserable, because what you would be doing is trying to cultivate a human being that somebody else can actually live with and enjoy. So tonight, that is what I am here to bring. I'm talking about sleeping with a stranger. This has been episode number 11. And on June 16th, we'll jump into episode number 12, where we'll be talking about dating after divorce. I'm talking about these topics because they're real. They're really happening, everybody. They're really happening. And you know they are. You're probably watching right now, and it's happening right at you and to you. So whatever you need to do to get to the next place, I listened to Denzel Washington today, and he said, when you get to the place in the book of your life, when things get a little sticky, just turn the page. Just turn the page. Just turn the page, and you will find a new leaf where you can start all over again in your marriage. You can stop sleeping with a stranger and enjoy your marriage until death do you part. Thank you for joining me tonight, and have a good night.
Let's talk about love, like you and me all night, and let's talk about love, and feeling alright, and let's talk about love, yeah, baby, come and dance with me.